video recording, so when I throw up a replay for this, that you guys have a better version of it. All right. Well, welcome. There you go. Ahuva, Natasha. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. I'm glad to see you here. I don't recognize your name. And I see Dale and Kelly and Sharon and Steve. So what's up, everybody? We're going to just jump right into it. And I'm going to, in my, my true spirit, I'm going to freestyle here. I'm going to have some fun off the cuff, okay? I'm just kind of winging a little bit here. Oh, you're from Mount Shasta. No way. When I was younger, I lived in Anaheim, and we had a dog that we named Shasta because of Mount Shasta. And I was so sad, man. I missed that dog very much. I mean, I was young, but I can still see that dog running around the living room. How cool are you from Mount Shasta? Okay. I am... I'm gonna take Steve's advice. I'm gonna relax. Because I got a little bit wound up there for a second. Oh shit, it's all broken. It's not gonna work. But it's working just fine. And that's what happens when you just slow down a little bit. You just think through it. You figure it out. So we did. We figured it out. All right. So move my camera a little bit. I'm always playing around with where it goes on the screen. I just have this big monitor. So if I put it way up top here, then you look at the top of my head. If I put it at the bottom here, you look up my nose. Steve is in Hungary. Wow. Holy cow. That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That makes me all of a sudden, I got to up my game a little bit. I really want to tell you a little bit of, I guess, a story or something before I start. And it's about the week I had, which was a shitty week. And it was shitty because I was just depressed. I was just down on myself. I just felt like, I felt like a loser. I felt like I wasn't doing a good job in my life, that I hadn't reached my goals, that I wasn't really worth anything. Why would anyone even listen to me? What am I even pretending to do? Which is something that I think we all can relate to, because we all go through it. Maybe on different levels or, different stages of where we're at and, what we're about. But I didn't even want to do the webinar this weekend. I didn't want to do it. I couldn't even think. I couldn't think of anything to do it about. Which is funny because there's so many things in my head that want to get out. There's so many books that I have on the shelf. So many courses I've been through. And there's so much trial and error that I have to talk about. So I don't know why I felt like I didn't have anything to say or to talk about. And so I fell back on something. It happened this morning. I was going to not have a class this week. It was going to be the first time I had not had a class in almost 2 months. And I made a commitment that the first quarter of this year, every Saturday, I was going to do a webinar. I was going to do something awesome. And that I wasn't going to be... What's the word I'm looking for? So I was going to say sleazy. But that's not really a fair word, because I'm never sleazy. I wasn't going to be salesy. I wasn't going to push things. I was going to give. See, a lot of people that are online, that are teaching, their personality or whatever, they ask a lot. Ask. And every once in a while give a little bit. So I learned from some of these people. I've built a business online. I've built a following online. And it was by having some great information and by being a cool person and by not treating people like numbers. But I still was like trying to sell everything. Like, like a used car salesman or something. That's how I felt. It's how I still feel sometimes. And it's human nature is what it is. That's all. Because this is a lesson that I want to share with you guys right here before we even jump in to the lesson. If we're meant to, start here and end there, so it's the straight line. If we just walked on that straight line, that would be boring. That would not be challenging. That would not have color. There would be no excitement. There would be no turbulence. In essence, there would be nothing to push us out of our comfort zone. There would be no growth. Because growth never happens where we're comfortable. It's only when it's really, really uncomfortable. And then we go ahead and say, yeah, this sucks and this is really uncomfortable and I'm going to do it anyway. That we push through some of those barriers. Okay, so I felt like that's kind of where I was at. I made a commitment to myself. I had an agreement. And when we break agreements, when we have broken agreements in our life, it starts this downward spiral. Things go down, 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 down. And it's not a pleasurable, positive, happy. It ain't good. So here's where I'm at today. There's more I want to say about this, but I'm stymied. I want to come back to it. That's what I'm going to do. Because I feel like it really relates to our lesson today about me brain versus we brain. So it's me, all about me and what I want versus everyone, what's good for everyone. How can I maybe sacrifice something that's going to help someone else? Like maybe today I could show up and talk for a while about something because it's going to help you. And that was my commitment. I said the first quarter of this year, I was just every weekend, I was going to do an awesome seminar. I wasn't going to be a salesy, idiot. And I was going to give you guys more than you expected. All right. It was going to be, what I gave you was going to be bigger than what you expected. The information was going to be more than you thought. The care that I take of you would be more than you would have expected. Like the love is bigger than what was expected. So that means I just got to get off of my pity potty and talk and share. And I came to this realization after I just decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to have the class today. That it's normal to feel like this. It's just part of who you are. If you are human, then you're going to have highs and you're going to have lows. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to ebb and flow. It's daytime, it's nighttime. The tide comes in, the tide comes out. The babies are born and then the elderly pass away and go home with it. There is a constant exchange. It's like it comes from heaven above and then it comes from Mother Earth. It's like both ways. It's always in motion, always in flux and always moving. So by embracing that, instead of trying to, take a stand, and I don't even know what I'd be taking a stand about, I want to, let me just drop all that crap. Let's just jump right into our lesson today. Me brain versus we brain. This is something that I'm going to get a little geeky about, okay? Because I'm going to talk a lot about neurology. I'm going to talk about your brain and your body and how they're connected. And then ultimately about your mind. So in our previous lessons, we've gone through the different layers of field, the physical body, the etheric body, mental body, emotional body, the astral plane. Excuse me. So I want to talk, I'm going to stay physical world. Okay, I'm not going to get so way out there today. I want to talk about your brain. I'm going to talk about the way that it's meant to be, and then the way that we screw it up. We throw a big fat monkey wrench in it. Pow, pow, pow. We mess the whole thing up. So if you know this, then that's the first step into your ability to change it, to do a different thing, to get a different result. And we're going to begin with my trusty paint pad here. So I'm going to share the screen with you guys. And I'm gonna draw you some pictures. Picture. Okay, so let me find a big fat marker. Tools. That sucks. I need a big fat marker. Big fatty. Okay, here we go. This is your brain. And then your spinal cord comes down below that. Here's your brain. Kind of looks like a big happy face Pac-Man, right? So I'm going to take this brain and I'm going to divide it into a couple sections, okay? And I think I'll color code them also, just to make it a little easier for you to understand. So let me grab red. Let me fill in this area with red. I'm going to grab pink. Fill this area in pink. And really what I'm doing is I'm highlighting lobes of the brain. So the red was the temporal lobe. The pink is the parietal lobe. The blue will be the frontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex. And then the yellow will be the occiput. So let me even just write those things in there. Oh, that's going to be in yellow? Okay, let's change that. Frontal lobe. Then let's go here to parietal lobe. Okay, so stay with me here because this is important. It's just setting a foundation here. You don't have to memorize all the stuff. You don't have occipital lobe. Okay. So in this picture of this brain, I'm doing this part in a little bit more detail, and I'm going to erase this in a second. But I just want you to understand that there are some main players in our conversation today. Now, your brain is divided into left and right, so we're looking at it from the side here. So we're just kind of looking at the left side of the brain because there's a left frontal lobe and there's a right frontal lobe. There's a left parietal lobe and blah, blah, blah. So we're looking at half of the brain, okay? And I put these things here just to give you some reference point because you may understand something about the brain already. And I'm just trying to keep it simple in the beginning here so that if you know nothing about it, you can kind of follow along. So I'm about to take this area of occipital lobe here and I'm going to turn it white, not black, white. Oh, I'm going crazy now. Let's go paint bucket, yellow, white. I'm having some trouble there. I don't know why that's so hard for me. Figure out, you think I'm a smart guy, be able to figure that out. There we go. Okay, I'm getting rid of the occipital lobe in our conversation. That was the whole point of that goofy little problem I had there. So we're going to talk about the me brain versus the we brain. I'm going to put a picture right here. Me. The me brain is in the temporal section. And the we is up here in the frontal lobe. This is the we brain, okay? This is the area that in our conversation today, I'm calling the we brain versus the me brain. And I'm leaving parietal lobe in here in pink just for you to kind of understand a bit about where we're going to go because the parietal lobe is an important part of our conversation. So let me jump back away from this for a second and get back to, I just want to talk to you for a second. When we are, I guess, developing, when we're kids, when we're babies, when we're in utero, when we're in development, there is a sort of primal instinct and innate drive that takes over everything. The development of all the stuff is under the guidance of something other than just our thinking mind, other than just our super smarty pants, head stuff that we've learned. We as people, we're not in charge of, like, as the mom and how smart she is and all the books she's read, the mom is not in charge of the developing baby in her belly. So when that fetus is in utero and going through embryogenesis and the expression of life, it is under the guidance of something that's not mom. It's not dad, it's not mom, it's not baby. It is a presence. It is a template. It is a field that we grow into. And a part of this sort of primal level infancy is the me brain. So when a baby is born, they are totally 100% into the me brain. And so here's what I mean by that. Their temporal lobes, specifically parts of the anterior temporal pole, which is tied in with the limbic system, the emotional brain, also something far more primitive and phylogenetic in its origin than our cerebrum, than our cerebral cortex, than our prefrontal cortex, than our frontal lobe. It's primitive to all of that, okay? The limbic brain and the emotional brain is like really primary part of our evolution and our development. So it's only natural that when we're born, we are a bit more primal. And here's what's cool about humans, okay? Like a horse is born and they can stand up and walk, I think, in like 10 minutes or 2 minutes or something, or 20 minutes. I might have that wrong. But the point is like, boom, a lot of these mammals are developed. They're almost fully developed at birth. So a baby bird, the mom has to come and feed them for a while. But then after that, boom, I'm done with you. You're on your own. And they're little babies, but they are developed enough to go and figure it out. This is not a luxury that we have as humans. We can't do it on our own. We are so very dependent on not only the caretaking of our parents, but the closeness and the attachment, the proximity, the nurturing, the proprioceptive, the feeling of touch, the ability to be held and be touched and to feel connected to as we develop emotionally. These things are not just given. It's like an evolutionary gamble that we played as humans. If you take a baby and they're born and you just leave them there, they're going to die. In fact, it takes years of tending to that baby. And here's the reason why, okay? And this is the point of our entire conversation today. The baby does not have the development up here in the front, in the prefrontal cortex. The baby has not developed the frontal lobe. The baby does not have, in this picture right here, let me share the screen. The baby doesn't have this blue part up here. The baby doesn't have the frontal lobe. So when a baby is born, it's almost like it's a little bit of frontal lobe, but almost nothing at all. Okay, it's temporal, it's parietal, it's everything else, but it's not frontal. And this is why a baby has a soft spot, because the prefrontal cortex grows like crazy. It grows like a weed, I guess is how you say it. And it grows that way up until, 2 years, give or take, maybe 3 years, but around that period. But what's interesting is what science has shown us about how the prefrontal cortex not fully developing until into the early 20s, which I think is a fascinating thing. I'm not going to get into it right now, but just in the United States, how they've legalized marijuana for medicinal purposes and now for recreational purposes, so it's not illegal anymore. But I'll be damned if it doesn't completely stunt the development of the brain and shut parts of it down. So kids that may, legally be able to, they might be 16 or 18 or 20. I really would encourage them to steer clear from it as they're continuing to grow and develop, because of the way it stunts the growth of the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, or the frontal lobe. But that's a totally different direction. I don't want to go there right now. I want you to understand these areas of the brain that are in the adult. So that was a picture I drew. But when you're born, there's not much of a frontal lobe. That's why we have a soft spot. That's why it, hardens and fills in at about 2 years old. It's because that frontal lobe needs room to grow. Like this whole front part of the skull has to come forward and make room for that. Okay. So in a perfect world, the frontal lobe develops. And let me go back to our picture here. The frontal lobe is the wee brain. So in a perfect world, we develop the wee brain. And as it grows over the first 2 years, what it does is it inhibits, it dampens the me brain. It slows down the temporal lobe. It puts a finger on it, it slows it down. It keeps it in check. So when we're born, we're all about, well, really to explain what the temporal lobe does, what the me brain does, is it is selfish. That's really all it is. So I can use a lot of adjectives to describe being selfish, but it's about, this part of the brain is about you getting what you want when you want it. I want it all. I want it now. Excuse me. I want everything. I don't want to wait for it. It's only about me. I don't care about you. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you want. It's about me, and it's about what I want, and it's about where I'm going, and it's about what's important to me. So when we're 1 year old, that's important, okay? My diaper is full of a mess, so I'm throwing a fit. I need you to come and change it. I am hungry, so I'm throwing a fit. I want it now. I want food now. Bring it to me. So I'm not faulting a baby for being this way in any means at all. Just trying to build a case here that we're born this way. We are born in this sort of primitive, I have to survive. Okay, this part of our brain is very survival driven. And we don't care about anything else other than what's happening right now in this moment and our ability to survive. Whereas the frontal lobe, or the wee brain, as it develops, the frontal cortex begins to inhibit or dampen. Let me even draw an arrow. I'll draw an arrow. The frontal lobe comes down here and puts a big X. That's a goofy X, I know. I'm sorry. But it gives you a visual to understand that the way it's supposed to work, the frontal lobe is supposed to inhibit that. Okay, so the question really is, if we are adolescents, teenagers and our young adults, and now we're full-grown adults, and now we're moving into our seasoned years, if we are continuing to be driven by the temporal response, by the me brain, by the stuff that I want and the things that are important to me, the things that are associated with survival, with stress, with defense, with protection, then ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to have those commands take place in our physical world and in our physical body. Okay, so I'm going to get a new picture going here. File new. I guess I can't have them all going at the same time. So let me get a brush here. I'm going to draw the brain again. And I'm going to say temporal lobe, parietal lobe. And I'm just going to divide them that way. We'll just leave it like that. So bucket. What did I do? I did pink for parietal and I did red for temporal. Okay. In fact, let me even just real quick name them again. Frontal. Wait, why are you red? I don't want you red. Oh, well, I'll just leave it red. This doesn't really matter that much. Parietal. And then down here, we'll will be temporal. So again, these are names of lobes in the brain. Okay, I'm going to get my handy dandy brush again, and I'm going to draw the spinal cord. Okay, so here's what happens. Here is, in fact, let me even take a step back before I get into what happens. Here's the goal. You want your frontal lobe to develop and grow so that it can inhibit your primitive, survival, reflexive, protection, defensive responses. And the only way that those me brain responses are ever inhibited or ever dampened or ever slowed down, the only way we can turn the volume down on those things is by developing the prefrontal cortex, is by developing the frontal lobe, by developing the cerebrum. So the question is, how do I develop the cerebrum? Okay, well, I'm going to draw this arrow again because I said earlier, the frontal lobe job is to come here to the temporal lobe and to do what? X. Inhibit it. So we want that to happen. So the question is, how do we stimulate the frontal lobe? All right. Well, let's just work backwards. The area that we call the frontal lobe, in essence, this is the part of our cortex that's in charge of physical effects. It's for motor is what it's called. It's the part of our brain that tells our body what to do. Over here on this parietal side is what we call sensory. It means information coming in from the environment. It goes to our parietal. So let me work backwards here, okay? I'm going to start with temporal. We say this is not something we want in our adult years, so how do we exit out? Well, it's the frontal lobe's job to inhibit or exit out. So how do I build a strong frontal lobe? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because some kids are running around my window out here. Sorry. I was saying the reason that the frontal lobe develops is because the parietal lobe stimulates it. So I'm going to draw an arrow from parietal to frontal, and I'm going to put instead of an X, I'm going to put a plus sign here. Whoops, if I can. Yeah. Okay, that's a big plus sign, in case you're wondering. What it means is that when the parietal lobe and the neurons that are involved in this part of the brain, whenever they fire, whenever they're stimulated, whenever they do their cut or do their thing, they're made to stimulate these parts of the frontal brain. And then when these guys are stimulated, they grow and they do their job of inhibiting the temporal response. Are you with me? Okay, so I know I'm going 100 miles an hour. I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second, and I just want to check in with you guys. Are you understanding this idea that the temporal lobe is in control? It's primary, it's primal, it's what's running the show when we're born. And as we develop and grow, the frontal lobe is supposed to grow and dampen or inhibit that primitive response. So now we're building on this idea of how do we get the frontal lobe to grow? Because a lot of people, their frontal lobe doesn't grow. I mean, it does some kind to some extent, to some point it does. I'm not saying that it never does. But what I'm trying to say to you is that there are some simple key things that are the most bang for the buck. And I promise that the epidemic that we have in our society here in the United States of obesity and diabetes and heart disease and cardiovascular disease and stroke and cancer and, metabolic syndrome, fibromyalgia, all of these names they come up with for crap that has to do with your body being in a perpetual defensive emergency mode. You are constantly running the me brain. If you have these conditions, you are constantly running the me brain, which is confusing, I think, to some people that feel like they're good people and they're doing the right thing. And blah, blah, blah. How can I be the me brain? You know, I'm the nice person in the world. That's another conversation, really. I think it has a lot to do. The short answer is that they're still attaching and latching onto a lot of negative emotions. And usually those things are like worry and fear. This is also usually a female thing. Men just get really pissed off and really angry, and women kind of just get quiet and reclusive, and then they worry. Like the people at church who worry about all the other younger ones. What are they doing? What's going to happen? I'm so worried. I'm saying that the worry is just as poisonous as some crazy jerk who's just super angry at the world. They're equal in amount of poison and chemicals are running through your body because they're both coming from the me brain. Okay? So let's jump back to the picture. Thank you for giving me a couple yeses there too, so that we are all on the same page. Let me share the screen. Okay. So the question is, how do I stimulate the parietal lobe? I know that's just what you were dying to know. If we're working backwards and we're saying the temporal lobe is what's there in development, but we don't want that. We want the frontal lobe to develop to stop it. We want the we brain to take over. We want a bigger part that understands a bigger picture, that understands the consequences of our actions and that how our choices influence other people. And we want to be about something more than just our own selfish, XYZ, whatever it is. Well, it all depends on the parietal lobe's ability to stimulate the frontal lobe. That if there's no stimulation to the frontal lobe, it'll never grow. So we got to stimulate it. We got to get it fired up. We got to get a big hot red poker and we got to poke that sucker. We got to get a stick and poke it and just get it fired up. All right. We have to stimulate that frontal lobe. And the way we do it is by stimulating the parietal lobe. So the question, how do we stimulate the parietal lobe? And I'm so glad that you asked. So I'm going to bring another arrow into our picture here. And the way that we stimulate our parietal lobe, let me draw another beautiful plus sign here. Okay. The way that we do this is, I'm not going to say 100%, but I will say 90%. This is movement of the spine. And so I'm a chiropractor, so let me just, throw that objection out there right away. It's not because I'm obsessed with spine stuff and it's because I'm a chiropractor. Look, I even spelled movement wrong. I can't even go back and change that. Oh, well. It's not because I'm obsessed with the spine or something. In fact, the type of chiropractic work that I do, I never, ever, ever crack anyone's neck or their back. And it almost primarily has to do with how the emotional experiences of our past have us locked down into a me brain response, into a survival stress response. But here's what's really cool. And I'm going to pull the camera back on me here. Stop sharing. Okay. It is in our development, okay, we have it is insane the way that we're built in utero. It is a miracle. Okay, I don't care how smart you are or how many PhDs you have or how many WYSIWYGs or diplomas you got on the wall or Bunsen burners that you own. I don't care. You can't make a baby. It is insane. It is a miracle. It is a blessing that we are alive, okay? We have this short window of time here in our life. And we only get one of them. And it's incredible. If your parents had been having sex 10 minutes later than when they did, then you might not even be here. All right? You could be a bus or a tree or something. The level of complaining that I hear people make is just so ludicrous to me because of this incredible gift that we have. This presence, this guidance inside of all of us. I'm going on a rabbit trail. the point that I started off here making is that when we're in development embryologically, there's something guiding the expression of those cells as they divide. One cell divides into two cells. And then they divide into 4 and 8 and 16 and 32. That is under the guidance of something. And here's what I want you to understand. That through those somites that are expressed in the development of the embryo and the fetus, the way that those cells, we call them stem cells, the way they move to different parts of the body and then transfer into the correct things that they're supposed to be, okay? 90% of the information that stimulates your parietal lobe, okay? 90% of the information that stimulates your parietal lobe. And now keep in mind, this is the same information that then turns around and stimulates the frontal lobe. Remember, that's a good. We want that to happen. And then when the frontal lobe is, when it is stimulated, it turns around and inhibits the primal primitive me brain. It turns off the defensive stress chemistry. It lets us feel safe and comfortable in a way that we can let down our guard and begin to develop different parts of our faculties and who we are. See, mice that are, let me even back up. An experiment done with mice was proven to show that when a mother was stressed out through the pregnancy, that the baby developed more parts of the hindbrain and the primitive areas involved with survival and defense, and had smaller areas of the cortex that were involved in critical thinking and problem solving. Whereas the pregnant rats, the mother rats that were nurtured and taken care of and were relaxed, those babies had a huge prefrontal cortex, and it's like in utero, the baby is getting cues from the environment, and it is developing itself in a way that is appropriate for what world it's about to come into. You know, if it's a world full of dinosaurs and stuff that are going to eat you at every turn, then you're going to be your brain and your wiring is going to be ready to go for defense, for protection. But if you're developing in a world where that's not the case, then you're going to go into a development. That energy is going to be redirected into developing parts of you that are used for thinking, that are used for, whatever else, for critical analysis and solving stuff and being able to use abstract thought to kind of play chess, I guess, with life. See, chess is an interesting game because you're thinking about, if I make this move, then they'll be able to make that move, that move, that move. And if I make these 7 moves, they'll be able to make those 12 moves. And you can think through these layers and this depth of it. But if you live in a world of constant stress where you're wondering when the shoe is going to fall, when the knife is going to cut you off, then you don't have any time to think ahead or plan ahead. It's about now. It's about now. It's about, where am I going to get that money? It's about, where am I going to get that food? It's about, where am I going to be safe? Where can I rest without someone else trying to steal what I have or even, eat me or something? So, boy, I'm getting wound up now. Let's see, where the hell was I? What was I even talking about? Let me just check in on you guys here. All right, I'm glad to see y'all here. Are we having fun? Are we having a good time? Okay, so I was building up to something and then I bailed on it. So I did a bad job of building up. But what I was saying is that 90% of our embryological development is designed to fire to the parietal lobe. Okay? And the parietal lobe then fires to the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe then inhibits the temporal lobe. So 90% of the cells that are part of our development are designed to grow and to feed this loop so that we can dampen and turn down the volume on those old school primitive wiring programs and begin to develop something bigger, better, faster, stronger. Something that's going to serve us in time. This is idea of evolution. This is the idea of how our brains evolve into something greater and greater and greater and greater. And so this is part of that greatness, and this is part of that evolution. So, where do 90% of those things come from? They come from the spine. They come from midline structures. So this is what it will show in, this isn't my opinion because I'm a chiropractor. This is what neurology texts will show, is that movement from the spine is what drives information and input to the parietal lobe. So I told you it was a sensory part of the brain, didn't I? So, if you touch something hot, it's a sense. It's a sensory experience. So this part of your brain knows that it's hot and it knows to pull the hand away. So this part of the brain is involved in all of the information coming in from the environment. And then the parietal lobe, after it takes in all that information from the environment, then fires messages to the frontal lobe, appropriate messages, so that we have what's called a motor response. We have an action. It's almost like sensory means stuff coming in and motor means stuff going out. So whatever our motor response is, whatever our physical responses are, whatever our physical chemistry is, whatever our physical posture is, and really our demeanor and our attitude, all of that is after the fact because it's all a perfect response to the environment. It's all a perfect response to the information coming in. So when I say that it is your spine, here's really what I mean. Here, let me stop this. Here's what I mean, okay? Your spine is meant to have some specific curves. So in your neck or your cervical spine, we call it a lordosis. In the thoracic spine or in your mid-back, it's a kyphosis because it curves the other way. And then in your low back, it curves back again into a lordosis. Now, the reason that's important is because those vertebrae are built that way. They grow that way. They line up a certain way. They're meant to have those curves. And if you do not have those curves in place, then those joints, those vertebrae that are in the spine, that area of the physical body, the midline structure, not the shoulders and not the hips, not the arms and not the legs. I'm talking about the neck and the spine. When those vertebrae all line up the way they're supposed to, okay? When the bodies line up and the disc is in place and the facets all line up and everything articulates through the pillars the way that it's supposed to, all of the muscles have the correct tone, they have the correct length, they have the correct, what am I trying to say? Through the muscle spindle and the Golgi tendon, it's like a feedback loop that lets them know they're all in the correct place and everything is working correctly. See, if you don't have the correct curves in your spine, all right, if you don't have the correct lordosis and kyphosis curves in your spine, then that just means simply, it just means that the vertebrae aren't lining up appropriately. They're designed to line up a certain way, and if you don't have the right curves, then your stuff isn't lining up the right way. So if it's not lining up the right way, it's not moving the right way. And if it's not moving the right way, it's not going through the full range of motion. It's not going through the way it's not doing what it's supposed to do. In fact, it is robbing your brain of food. So I'm going to say that again. Motion and movement are your brain's food. You got it? The movement from your spine and your midline structure accounts for 90% of the information through the nervous system that fires to the brain. So this is the DCML pathways. This is dorsal column, medial lemniscus. There are plenty of pathways too that are cerebellar, spinal cerebellar. So these are like joint position and muscle spindle and Golgi tendon and proprioception, which is joint position. So if you don't have the proper alignment, okay, in your spine, if you don't have the proper curves, another way for me to say this, it's a lot, more simple. If you don't have a good posture, then you don't have good curves. And if you don't have good curves, your brain is not getting the food that it needs. It's really all there is to it. That's really how it works. If your brain is not getting the food, it's not working right. I promise you that. If you have improper curves, so if you are in a camp of people that is, dare I say, 99% of, the United States. Okay, I won't say the world. The United States pretty much, though. Overweight, sedentary, seated all the time in an improper position. The biomechanics don't line up. It isn't working. It's not working the right way. In fact, I just thought of what I'm going to do next week. I'm going to do a class called Tensegrity that's going to deal with the correct way of things being lined up, not only just in our spine and stuff, but in our life as well, and how the physical body influences and affects our subconscious and our ability to vibrate. Because I promise you, if you're sick, you're not broadcasting an awesome signal out into the world full of joy and love and bliss and abundance and all the things that you want to have happen to you. If you are sick, if you have, and here's the curse of being young, if you're still in your 30s or if you're still in your 40s, you're young, all right? So you have the luxury of being young and not really coming off with some of the side effects of those things. Because here's what happens. When you don't have the proper alignment, and I don't even care about alignment, really. I'm not like an alignment junkie or something. I just need food to the brain. I need stimulation and input to that parietal lobe to input the frontal lobe to dampen and inhibit the temporal, to inhibit the stress response. Because if I don't have that proper movement and if I don't have that that food going to the brain, then all my primal stuff is going to take over. And throughout the course of time, and it's really just a matter of years, that stress response will become cemented in place. And through a process of rhythm and hypnotic sort of cementing into place this way of being, all right, we become stress balls. We don't even know how to relax. We try and do a meditation and we close our eyes and our mind is just like, we struggle. And so I would recommend each and every one of you find some very simple ways to do some things that are about your posture, that are about your alignment, that is really, it's just about the movement. Because if I have a spine, let's say I'm looking at somebody's neck, and someone even said here about having reversed cervical curve. It just means their neck is curved the wrong way. And this is what happens after accidents, car accidents and such. And boy, if you've ever been in a car accident, please go and see a chiropractor. Please do it. They're not going to break your neck or anything. And there's plenty of them that never crack anything either. So get over that part. But what I'm saying is that when you're in a car accident and you rip and tear tissue and, all of the fibrous connections of everything, the disc space, the annulus, they rip and tear. It's like taking a puzzle and throwing it all in the air. And if you don't catch all of those pieces and then put them back together the way they're supposed to go, if you just say, I was in a wreck and it's fine, no worries, all those pieces fall into a big pile and they cement together that way. And it is damn near impossible for you to pull them apart and put the puzzle back together the way it was designed to be. So I'm not getting into, a thing about car accidents or anything in chiropractic, but I'm saying that a car accident is like a big deal right in your face, and it's a big trauma. But when your posture is out of place and you're placing forces on your neck and your muscles and the tissues involved with that, it's like little tiny micro traumas all day long, all day long, all day long, all day long, all day long. And after 10 or 15 years, boom, you're far more worse off than somebody that was just in a couple car accidents. So the good news is you can change this stuff. Like somebody might tell you that you have degenerative joint disease, or you have a bulging disc, or you have osteoarthritis, or you have degenerative disc disease, or you have osteophytes. And they're all just a bunch of fancy ways to say the same thing, which is all a fancy way to say you don't have the right range of motion. In fact, the wisdom that runs your body, it sees that you're putting forces on the bones and stuff in a way they're not supposed to. So it's going to start reinforcing and lay down more bone. It's called Wolff's Law. It says wherever there's pressure and force, we're going to put calcium down in the tissue to reinforce and make it stronger. So if you can correct the curves in the spine, the posture, and restore the proper movement and remove the forces, all the degeneration goes away. It's all reversible. And I don't care who wants to argue with me about that. I'll go to the mat about that one. All of it's reversible. I've seen it reverse. I've seen it time and time again. And I don't for 1 second believe that because your spine has some degeneration in some way that you're stuck that way forever. No. No way. No way. If they haven't closed the lid on you yet, you can get better. So let me take a step back again, okay? The big picture and the big idea here. We're trying to create a balance in your brain where the primitive parts are, the volume is turned down, they are inhibited, so we're not running this constant low-grade stress response in the background, okay? And the way we do that, the biggest bang for our buck, 90% of all the information going right down that awesome superhighway is through movement of the spine. So I want you to think about some things that you could do. What could you do to get more movement into your spine? What do you think your posture is like? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's great? Do you think it's horrible? Could it be better? I'm telling you, any step you could make in a positive direction is going to be positive. That sounded stupid, but anything that you can do to begin introducing more flexibility and range of motion into areas of your spine, your brain is going to love it. And I'm going to give you a cheat here, okay? One of the little back doors into stimulating this part of the brain is through vibration. So the physical sense of vibration is going to stimulate nerves that are going to fire to the parietal lobe, and they're going to then in turn do that whole dance in that circuit that we want. So if you have something like a back massager or some of the fancier therapy things or plates that you stand on that vibrate, it's like food for your brain. It's lighting up your brain. It's lighting you up. It's giving your brain the food that it needs. So I hope that today we've given you a sort of a basic, I'll own it. We just kind of scratched the surface here a little bit. It's a basic idea of the me brain versus the we brain. And I see one of the comments here, chiropractic care is vital. Chiropractic care is good, but there's lots of good care in the world. Physical therapists now all have the ability to become doctors as well. And the things that they're teaching are awesome. Some of the work that people do in the realm of the energy world with like Reiki and healing and touch and stuff like that, there are incredible amounts. And so I'm always leery of someone that says they have the answer and that they know everything and they know how it works. Because we're all flowers, right? We're all snowflakes. Everyone's a little bit different. And we all have a different story and a different history. So we're all influenced and affected by different treatments and approaches in different ways. But if you understand this bigger picture, if you understand that the part of your primitive brain that wants to take over and it wants to be selfish and it wants to be the center of everything, almost like I would imagine the ego, then you can take active steps to dampen that, to turn the volume down on it, and to promote the growth of your prefrontal cortex so that you're in a space to not always be on the defense, to not always be retracting. And there's some really simple, fun things that you can do, not only to get motion in your spine, but directly to stimulate the frontal lobe. So again, 90% of the stuff comes from the correct movement of the spine. I'm down. That's like, if you're going to do anything, do that one, okay? Get some motion into the spine. Do some yoga classes. Do some stretching. Practice turning your head from one side to the other and see where it goes. Some people, they get to hear. I just went to the store earlier today, and a woman, she was turning left, and she had to do this at the car. She had to go. I'm thinking, oh, bless that lady. She is on a crash course for some horrible, horrible chronic lifestyle diseases that are going to start kicking into gear right around the age of 60 to 70. And it'll be a downhill cliff. Okay, so you know this, and you're here for a reason. You understand some of these things, so let your awareness permeate, I guess. Like you understand, and you know. So it's time for you to be active, to be proactive. Just do a little something. A little something is better than nothing. Now, I'm not saying, like, go buy some course on posture and all the exercise and everything. In fact, I just decided in the middle of this webinar, I want to go deeper into that next week. And I want to introduce a topic called tensegrity. So tensegrity is about the integrity of a system being based on the level of tension between the different elements. It's a kind of a cool concept, a little bit far out there, developed by Buckminster, who was a famous ecologist. Well, I almost said ecologist. He's a designer. What's the word? Publisher. I'm totally drawing a blank. I'm going to remember as soon as we're done. He was an engineer. That's what it was. Oh boy, I'm going to watch back on that one and laugh. But some really cool concepts about the human body and how the thought forms or the ideas, the little like mind bullets that we have, our thoughts, how they influence and impact the levels of tension between all the different elements is fascinating. And I'm going to give you guys some good tips to build on top of this. So please do me a favor. And first, let me say to those of you last week that made some donations to the Montessori school, I really appreciate that. I really do. And I hope you guys are enjoying the cool gift that I gave you. I didn't even tell you what it was going to be, but just something extra and fun for you. I hope that that you really enjoy it. I know that you will, because it's something awesome that I put together for you guys. So that's it for today. If you have any burning questions or anything here, please hit me up now up here in the chat box. And I'm even, after I turn it off, I'll hang here for a second just to answer some questions. So even when the screen goes dead, we still have some opportunity to answer some questions. That's what I got for you guys today. And thank you for being here. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart too, because I wasn't even sure I was going to come today. I really, really had to dig and figure out what I wanted out of this, I guess. And I think the most beautiful thing for me in my own, sort of selfish respect is that this gives me an opportunity to just sit here and talk to you and to just be myself and to just say what's on my mind and to just share some of the things that I've learned instead of what I've done in the past is try really hard to think about what I want you to hear or what I think you want to hear and try to be something that just isn't authentic, because it won't connect if I do that. It won't make the transfer. It won't make a difference. That's what I'm saying. So I love all of you guys with all my heart. If you enjoyed today, or if you're watching the replay, please send me a message. Send me an email, drted@drmorter.com. Let me know what you think of it. Maybe some things that you agreed with, some experiences in your life, maybe something that you feel like you disagree with. I want to know that stuff, I want to learn from you too. So the comments that you give me are like oxygen, okay? They keep me going. So please just take a minute. Tell me something that you got out of it, or maybe a direction that you'd like to go in, or something that's appealing to you. It means a lot to me, and it helps me tailor it for you. Make it good for you. That's what I want to do. I want to make it good for you. So with all the love in the world, I want you guys to go enjoy the rest of your day. It is like 70 degrees here where I live in February, so I'm going to go out and enjoy the day. And I will see you then, or I'll see you at another time.